Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, I am here with Jin Ong. She is a medical intuitive, and I thought it would be so cool to bring her on the show because I also have my master's in intuition medicine, and we both come from more medical, traditional trained backgrounds. You know, myself a medical doctor, and Jin, you are a naturopath, right? An osteopath. Yeah. And so I found, and now we both have shifted into the healing arts in a way that's really more intuitive, like our titles say, but also that supports our spiritual growth, our personal development, and the transformation of our lives in general. So, this more holistic approach. So, I'm really excited for our podcast today, which is entitled Your Body Has a Message for You. So, welcome, Jin. Thank you so much for being here. Absolutely. So I'm curious, and I think we went into this a bit last time. And also, oftentimes when people, I go on shows, they're like, you were a medical doctor. What caused you to want to go into this other path, this less traditional path? And similarly, I asked you, what was your shift from osteopathy into intuitive medicine?
Actually, through my own health crisis that was about over a decade ago now, where I just had this great life, great job, relationships, earning great money. I was working between Australia and New Zealand, and then my health just started going downhill. And I had always experienced some skin issues, but over a decade ago, it really got out of control with terrible cystic acne. I started getting sick all of the time, random fevers, colds, I got ulcers on my eye. I remember almost triggering an autoimmune condition because I had bilateral ankle stiffness. I couldn't walk down the stairs in the morning without holding onto the handrail. And I was just thinking, what is going on? Like, everything in my life is really good. I didn't feel stressed. But why is my body getting so much worse than what it ever has been? And I had just seen people go through autoimmune musculoskeletal issues in the clinic and realized that I had to make a change, but it just didn't make sense to me. And so I went down the pathway of doing some courses thinking I was going to help these clients that I wasn't able to help, and then discovered actually I need this for myself. And I went down this pathway of processing my emotions. And one day, because I was actually in a very fix-it mode, I was taking all the herbs, I was doing all the treatments, I was changing my diet, I was being very, very controlling. But as I was processing my emotions, this one day I got this little message that was quite vague, telling me that I needed to follow my intuition. And I kept on going, and I got another message saying, you need to speak your truth. And I was like, okay, I don't really know what this means. But I kept just being curious. And then all of a sudden, a really clear message landed. And at the same time, I had this moment where I was looking at my body. It was covered in cystic acne on my face, my chest, my back. I had these rashes and hives in all of my joint lines. It was just so bizarre. And previously, I'd always just been looking at, how do I fix this? What do I do? What money can I throw at this? And it obviously wasn't the answer. And in this moment, I looked at my body and I just had this sense of peace and awe and amusement of like, oh my gosh, you've just been trying to speak to me all this time and I really haven't been listening. And so the message came through really clearly that I could see the emotions stuck in my patient's body that was responsible for their undesirable manifestations, but I wasn't speaking the truth to it because I was too worried about what they would think about me, if it was in the scope of my practice, and so on. And so, yeah, I guess I got from that experience that if you want to heal your body, this is what you need to step into. And that felt scary. So it took me another couple of years, but then I stepped into it and my skin, my health started getting better and better and better.
Absolutely. And I love this story because it speaks to one of the spiritual principles that the new form of the grail, the grail from Indiana Jones, and this catalyzing force for our healing, our transformation, our spiritual awakening. It's been said that it's transformed. No longer it's this chalice, right? It's now in the form of disease and illness and sickness, because what we're finding is more and more people are literally pushed to change their lives because of some kind of disease or ailment. And so we hear about people with like stage 4 cancer, they radically transform their life, their diet, make big changes with work, with relationships, and they cure themselves, right? And I had a similar thing 2 years ago when I first went into the relationship that I'm in now. And I had similarly like some eye eczema, it looked like, and some acne. And I didn't even have acne as a teenager. So it was like the strangest thing. But then I also discovered that the house I was living on, this is after I left, that it, from like a feng shui energy line perspective, like it wasn't the right house for me. And so even though it looked beautiful and there was a sea view there too and all of that, there were like multifactorials. One, I was like doing all this karmic and shadow work connected to the masculine, coming into like a deep union relationship. And so I feel like I was burning so much karma through the skin. And also I used to be like really love and light, like so much so like I don't even wear black. I still don't wear black. But it was almost like I didn't really go into shadow as much. And of course, as we're on our ascension and transformation path to become our best self, some of the shadow work we're here to do is like stuff from past lives and really ancient stuff. And as one of my missions, I know, is to help with the healing of the man-woman relationship. So obviously then I magnetized in this relationship that brought up so much of my shadow. Like I didn't even realize how much like anger and rage is there. I'm like, where is this coming from? But because I was also consciously aware and self-aware, it's like, oh, sometimes I wouldn't allow myself to express it or even in healthy ways. And so it was like coming out on my skin. And it was fascinating that literally nothing I could do. I would get facials, I would get acupuncture, I was getting all this stuff and nothing would heal it until I actually went in and like processed all of that. And it was more of like a spiritual work that I had to do. And no amount of like dermatology or aesthetics could heal the skin. And also I've, in some of the work that I do energetically, metaphysically, the skin is connected to safety and protection of the individuality. And so I feel like for me, it made sense because I was coming into this union where we didn't see eye to eye on everything. And so it's like it was testing my boundaries to hold my truth in the face of his truth. And now it's like being able to learn to, okay, you can think differently than me. And so it was almost like learning how to be an individual within a relationship because it had been a while since I went into a relationship. And so, yeah, and that brings me to the next thing I think that's so important to talk about is that certain disease characteristics, as well as positioning on the body, is giving us information too. That there is a body of work that's been showing to us, like telling us for, I think Dr. DeMartini, he's one who has mapped out all these things. So did Louise Hay with You Can Heal Your Life. And basically, they're like almost like dictionaries that tell us, okay, this is here, this is on this part of the body. And I feel like the title of this podcast says is like our body has a message for us. And I went through a similar thing when I was leaving Western medicine. When we would be in clinic, I was born with my intuitive gifts. So part of what made it easy for me to leave was I wasn't brainwashed by the system where it was like, okay, this is a shoulder pain, so now you're going to get a surgery. It's like, that's actually a relational problem right there. And then I went on to learn like when you're in relationships with poor boundaries, other people's energy can go into our incarnation channel, which crosses, we have chakras on the back of our shoulders. And so a lot of times people are taking in energy in this chakra point. And so they think like, oh, my shoulder, it's like, yeah, but it's actually other people's energy that just needs to come out. You don't actually need a whole surgery for that. And so not being able to be brainwashed and say, okay, this prescription is going to cure you, because underneath that, there's deeper things, like you said, emotions that need to be processed, relationships that need to be healed. And I'm curious, do you work within, you mentioned you did a training. Do you work within these frameworks, or do you kind of just go more intuitively with what you feel?
Yes. I love everything that you say about the skin, the boundaries, and we're saying similar things, but we just have a different language around presenting it, and same as the shoulder as well. And I think it's great that we're recording this because, as you say, there's these books out there, and then there's our interpretations or the way of delivering the same thing in a different way that is just going to resonate, and people's bodies are going to hear it, even though I say their minds might not comprehend. And so, sometimes like in a relationship, it's like, I've been telling you that all this time. Why are you listening to them? It's like they just said it with, one little language change or one little word change. So I just forgot your question. Sorry.
I'm wondering, as an intuitive,
Oh, yeah.
and you also did training similar to me, do you oftentimes go more with what your intuition is? I kind of work with both, like
Yes.
what I learned through my studies in intuition medicine, as well as different quantum modalities, et cetera, as well. And sometimes I will look up in Louise Hay's. If something feels really stubborn, I'll say, oh, what did she say? What did she say about that?
Yeah.
Or are you just going by intuition, which
Yes.
similarly, I also go just by intuition. I kind of use both.
Yes. Yeah. I love to say to people that I think structure is really important to allow flow. But of course, people get over masculine, over structured, and they can't tap into the flow, the feminine, or the intuition. So actually the course that really opened things up for me that I thought I was doing for clients was only 10 days. But what it did was it affirmed what I was already seeing, but I was questioning and sort of doubting it. So it just gave me the foundation to go, right, there is a pattern, there is a structure. And for me, other than that, it's just been the experience of working with clients, experimenting, discussion, talking to them, and really seeing the patterns. I say that I see a lot of patterns, the negative patterns and the positive patterns that we can start to create more evidence for. I've read books here and there, and I think for anyone that I'm working with and anyone who's listening to this, I say just take the bits that resonate with you and leave behind what doesn't, and be open to the fact that the things that once didn't resonate with you might land in the future. But other than that, it has been very intuitively led, because I guess I started getting the confirmation because I was still at a point in time where I was seeing many clients. And what's really interesting is I've just had a really lovely woman circle back. We caught up today. We haven't been able to catch up over the last handful of months. It just hasn't aligned. And then it was like, of course, we were meant to wait this many months to catch up. And I used to see her back in the clinic 2016, 17, 18. And she's one of many people. I was just laughing. She said, you could see it. You called it at the time. And I just laughed, not at her, of course, but I said, you've got no idea how many people I see now, 2, 5, 10 years down the track. And I said what I said, worried like, oh my gosh, is this going to land? And then they'll come back and say, you knew exactly what was going on and you were so right, but I just wasn't ready to hear it. And then there is that pathway of they've got to honor their own timing as well. But it was so cool that she circled back today and just like gave me the most incredible update. And it's just so exciting how her life has changed and it's opening up. But, there's many stories like that. I can't go into the details of it. But there's many people that also reach out and say, is this like new German medicine, German new medicine, or internal family systems? And I think they're all great, but I like to be able to say, no, this is just my own thing that has downloaded, been channeled through me, through the experience of. And so I can really own that and, just tune into the individual. I value books, and there was a time, Louise Hay, to be honest, I haven't really resonated with her. There's another book, Ina Segal's The Secret Language of the Body. And I remember when my thing wouldn't land, like my delivery of an interpretation wouldn't land for someone, that I would say, here, read this and see if it lands with you. But I no longer need to use those resources because of the number of people that I have worked with, and this deep trust that, okay, I can see it, and if it's meant to land, it will land, but it might land a decade down the track, but hopefully we can move the needle forwards.
Yeah. And the same thing actually happens in the coaching space too. Like I know as an intuitive guide for others, I really think, because the coaching, like traditional coaching is more like you ask the person questions for them to come to the conclusion, but I'm more of like an intuitive coaching guide where it's more like, this is what I'm seeing. And I've been notorious to be very like blunt. Some people call it like Kali energy. Some people call it like the stern mother energy. And I have that because when I'm seeing it so clearly, it's hard to not say it. And similarly, I've had clients get so triggered, even sometimes leave my field for a while and then come back and say, yeah, you were right. Like it just triggered me so much to hear it. And what I feel is the universe, we can call it the universe, God, our guides, is always communicating to us, like whether we want to listen to the intuitive nudges or not, or even the signs and the synchronicities that come. And it's like when we don't listen, it starts to knock louder and louder. So I feel like first it presents like just in our intuition and in our outer reality. And the moment we don't listen, that's when it's getting louder, because it's like we're here to live our ultimate potential. We're here to live relationship to the fullest. We're here to live the ultimate life we desire, our divine blueprint. And when we're going off track, it's a way that like, come on. And then it does present in the body, because when there's pain, it's hard to ignore. When there's discomfort or inflammation, it starts to then take over your whole field, your consciousness, you're completely blinded by it. So we can prevent disease just by honoring truth, honoring our intuition, listening to the intuitive nudges, the signs, the synchronicities. So many people want to change their life, but they're scared, or they just think like, oh, but I invested all this time and money. Like when I left Western medicine, I remember so many colleagues being like, oh my God, I can't believe you did it. Like they wanted to do it. But I actually just decided like, this sounds crazy and I don't even know what's next. Like I did it without even knowing what was next. Like I didn't know I would go on to create all this or the coaching world or any of that. Like that was not in my reality. I used to just joke and be like, oh, I wish I was just a yoga instructor. And that was the start of my path. But I've been so good at like listening at the leading edge of that. So, but it requires that risk taking, and I feel that we can't get it wrong when we actually act. It's more that we'll learn. It's when we don't, I feel like then the body starts to erupt of like, oh, and it can erupt in all different positions for that specific message. So that's really how I've started to understand disease over the years, which is why it wasn't aligned to stay in Western medicine. It's actually like you get sick when you need to change your life, when you're not living by divine design. That's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I view it the same. I say things happen externally before they hit you internally. And people say, oh, it just is random. I'm like, it's never random. And, synchronicities, I love that. It's the universe telling you you're in flow or you've got to go. And I have a lot of people say, well, how do you know if the universe is telling you if it's go or you're in flow? It's like, well, if you've asked for some support and a sign to make a move, it's telling you go. And then I have another client, she communicates in really funny memes, and she said, when you ask the universe for a sign, a sign.
When you ask the universe what?
When you ask the universe for a signia sign.
A what kind of sign?
A signia sign. So you ask.
What's a signia?
Signia. It's my accent. A signia sign. So you ask the universe for a sign and it gives it to you, and you're like, no, that's good enough. I want a better sign. It's my accent.
Yeah. I still don't know what word you said, but it's okay. I'm getting it. So what? I say the word again before sign.
It's a sign, but it's a signia sign.
What's a
SIGN.
signia?
It's like a play on words. It's like, give me a better sign. I want a sign. Give me a signia sign.
Yeah. I hear you. It's true. And, I've done it too, where I feel like, okay, I've also observed where the pain, like let's say pains in the body happen when we're like in conflict. Like, okay, my mind is saying this, my heart is saying this, and there's like this incongruency with our different parts. And one of the lineages I studied, which I truly believe too, actually, is like that we have these different personalities that live in our organs, that when they are all in harmony, that's like when we're enlightened. However, it's not by chance that we incarnated with these different personalities, which are really just like personalities from different lives. Like in this life, I am Nikki Starr, right? But then in another life, I was a bear hunter. Like, who knows, right? And then in another life, I was the sex priestess. And so it's like all of those lives are supporting the mission of this life. And so where they live is essentially in different organs, which is why we can feel that conflict, because one needs something else that it's not getting, and the other one, and this idea that when they can all get along and drive the bus together, that's when we're in alignment. That's when we're on that more ease and grace path to living our dreams. But that's part of what it is. It's getting all of ourselves on board with what it is we want to create. And also what you were saying in relation to the future, like first it presents in the outer world before the inner world. So when I did one of my spiritual healing trainings, it was like I was part of a community, so I didn't feel like I needed to do it, but I felt like it was important because when everyone's speaking the same language within a group and we're thousands of people connected to this community, I felt like it would be good to understand that language. And it was really beautiful and validating for a lot of things. And one of the things that made perfect sense to me that was like the interplay between the energy field of our being and the physical is that our blood is real present time. The body is the past, right? Because the cells take what's in the blood and then incorporate it into the tissues and the cells. And it's our energy field that's our future. So in real time, whatever is in the energy fields, we have an opportunity to heal it before it affects the blood, affects the tissues. So we're given the warning before it actually becomes physically manifested. And that's why energy work is really preventative medicine. If we're looking at what is the preventative medicine. And it's life hygiene too, really, I feel. So when things are not flowing, not working, it's like, how are you shifting, evolving things to support the direction you do want to go in?
Yes, absolutely. I love the blood, the body, and the energy analogy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it perfectly makes sense in relation because our energy field is affected by external circumstance. Like energy is contagious. So one of the main focuses of my work is energy hygiene, which is just like we brush our teeth, we have to take care of our auric fields, our energy fields, which includes emotions, because emotions are energy in motion. And the processing of them, there's so many different ways to do that. And, simple things like for me, the energy work that I share with clients for them to become more empowered is like learn to ground, even like go swim. Like, even though it's winter here, I still swim because I know it will clear my energy for me. And so we can use physical things to ground and cleanse our energy, as well as energy work and different types of meditation practices, etc. I'm wondering if in your practice too, that you recommend certain types of, I guess, what's the main way you recommend clients to process? I know in the bonus, you guide us through a beautiful process to listen more deeply to the body and how to help energies shift in that way. And so I definitely recommend the bonus for everyone. I'm wondering if there's other ways that you also guide clients to support them.
Yeah. So not necessarily in rituals or physical things, because that's probably the biggest issue is that many of the people that come to me, they're doing all of the things and they're all great, but the energy and the intention behind all the self-care practices is in the wrong place. It's very much from the fix-it energy, and they come in and they say, I'm doing all the things, but why isn't it working? And so how do we back this up with the right emotional environment so it lands? And generally, I don't ask people to start new things or drop anything, but when it comes from within, they naturally find their own ways. So they're usually dropping off all the things that they did or changing the relationship with the things that they have done. And calling in new support, calling in new things that have that different intention and energy, the healthier one, that really is the self-healing. So I think there's a lot of valuable practices out there, but I let it naturally come from within. And what I prioritize is helping people process their emotions. So yes, I took people through that bonus in that visualization, but I feel like the emotional processing is something that needs to be supported, because when we're in our stuff, we will do these sneaky human bypasses that doesn't let us really address our stuff, because processing emotions can be uncomfortable. But you reach this transition point where it becomes fun because you realize and you see the evidence of what happens when you clear your emotional energy. For me, how I do it though is using a verbal dialogue process where I take people through certain prompts that they've got to speak into. And, there's different variations of it, whether you're processing on a memory, event, a comment, or an experience with a person. But you can also talk to body parts or inanimate objects, or some people who have got food relationship issues, they might be talking to the food or the food that they have an allergy with. there's been some really cool results with people just clearing food sensitivities and allergies just simply by processing on that thing. And I just get so curious. I never know where the release is going to take someone. And that's why I love hearing their story, but I just say, we've just got to release on this. And it's something that can just take a few minutes when you get the hang of it. And I just see them shift, like their body, their realizations of like, oh my gosh, that's what it's been trying to tell me all this time. So it really is that deep inner work that then guides you to, well, it creates a space for the new stuff, the right stuff to come on board. And again, like I said, take what resonates and leave what doesn't, is that sometimes the stuff that didn't work, it now has a time and a place on your journey if you remain open. So people do ask me, what's your daily rituals? And it's changeable. It's never set in stone because nature works in cycles. It depends where I'm at, how I'm operating. And I think the best thing for anyone to do is actually to engage working with someone to get support, because we just cannot see the stuff that sometimes we really need to see. And it's being open to being triggered, but allowing that to transform into an activation. And it's really working with the right people who have done the work, who can hold that space for you. And there's all sorts of levels of people out there. And when you make a decision, you will attract the right people. So yeah, no tips or advice because I don't know how long they'll be sustainable for.
Well, I do feel it. I want to bring light because I think it's really important what you said about the energy at which we come to something with, because the same is true in energy healing. So if we're in a fix-it energy, there's a little bit of like a resistance of like a go away, or this isn't supposed to be here. And that creates more of a charge that even in energy healing, it makes it stick. It's actually harder because you're not in the energy of neutrality or compassionate, loving space. And so even when I mentioned this on another podcast recently, of even when like I'm supporting someone to help clear an energy that's not theirs or something that's quite sticky, saying like, I see the divine in you, more of this like embracing, listening, I see you energy is what it's like the spikes get released in that moment. And so similarly, I feel like that's leading us into the bonus. How you have us listen is also really powerful to help something move and process. So I agree with you that working with people is invaluable to see blind spots and to really be called out on our crap, especially the stuff we don't want to look at. It's like, I remember I once had a woman give me that feedback. I was doing a collaboration on a facilitator training in LA, and on the closing ceremony, we did this thing where we did like eye gazing and we said the things about the other person that were so beautiful, which is how I like to end my retreats and such. And she was giving me a compliment, but it was kind of one of those compliments that's like, is this a compliment? She's like, yeah, you're one of those people that are like, this is your shit. Look at your shit. Do you see your shit? And so it's true. It's like, that's how we're going to clean it up, Yeah. And so a nicer way to say is like, we can help to bring light to the areas that we might be pushing away or judging or want to fix or think are wrong with us, when it's really just a portal and opportunity for that transformation, the evolution, that next level of our becoming.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
And so, Jin, is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up today?
Oh, so many things, but I think that's enough.
Okay.
We could talk forever.
We can. And let people know, I'm going to include all of your links and where people can find you in the comment section, but you can also share that now for those who are just listening.
Mm-hmm. So where I'm most active is Instagram, the art of listening to your body. I have transitioned recently out of posting a lot about my horses and my baby horses into more in line with my work and the emotional processing. So Instagram. And I do also have a podcast by the same name, The Art of Listening to Your Body.
Beautiful. So you can check that out there and join us inside the bonus content. Thank you all so much for being here, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.